I had a purpose before everybody had an opinion.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out.
You want Philly?
Chase Utley, you are the man.
You come out backyard and you try to start something, you always get your butt kicked.
The prayers have been answered.
How about those Eagles, baby?
And Rio Muto can run for days.
Can you feel what's about to happen on this field, man?
A perfect game. Roy Halladay has thrown the second perfect game in Philadelphia Phillies history.
All right, we are back here with another Philly Talk episode, getting an episode out right before opening day. Wanted to get this out just to talk about, some final thoughts, expectations. So obviously, as we know, in this past offseason, so the Phillies re-signed Aaron Nola to that 7-year contract. They extended Zach Wheeler. They extended Matt Strahm recently. And then the other two signings were Whit Merrifield and Spencer Turnbull. So just wanted to get some final thoughts out, discussing that stuff, discussing, some expectations for this upcoming for this upcoming season, not only just the expectations for the whole team, but maybe individual players. There's a lot to talk about. Starting off, all we heard this entire offseason, ever since we lost in the NLCS, was, Johan Rojas might have to start down in AAA, this and that, but nothing from spring training has alluded to that, ever really alluded to that, and we know now that Johan Rojas will be the starting center fielder. He will start with this team, and from there, it sort of goes into the sort of thoughts and expectations of, I wonder what this team is going to look like lineup-wise, especially. Now, we know Rob Thompson. He doesn't really mess with the lineup that much, especially when he gets it set. He'll maybe make adjustments towards the bottom, but when has Rob Thompson never really messed with the top of that lineup, especially, Schwarber, Turner, and Harper are pretty much solidified in that top three. But he likes to move other guys around. But the main thing I'm wondering is, where does Rojas play in all this, Is he going to be the 9th spot again? Are we going to see him move up or down the lineup, or if he starts in the 9, he can't move down, but is he going to move around in that lineup? The other question to beg, is it going to be a platoon situation? Is he going to be platooning in and out with Pache, with Merrifield, with Marsh? I know Fangraphs has their predictions that Marsh and Merrifield are going to swap out a lot in left field, and then Pache, Marsh, and Rojas are going to swap out a lot in center field. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. And when a guy like Merrifield or Pache comes in, where will they be batting? Especially Merrifield's the big question, because that's a guy that, we brought him in because he gets quite a lot of hits. And it'll be interesting to see how often he plays for us, That's just sort of the biggest question I have. And the biggest, I just wonder how that's all going to play out. And I'm super excited for the season to start because I want to see how this plays out from game to game, especially because I think in other situations, I think the benefit of having a guy like Merrifield is he can come in and pinch hit in those situations where you're not comfortable with having Rojas there, So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. The team has shaped out interestingly as well. As we've seen in spring training, we thought a lot of different guys might get the chance, and they'll obviously get their chances during the season when injuries occur. But it was interesting to see how this spring training played out. Jake Cave got traded to the Rockies. Cody Clemens, I think Derek Hall, Scott Kingery. There's one more name I'm forgetting, man. I forgot the name, but they all got sent down to. Weston Wilson was the other one. They all got sent down to AAA, and it's like, man, you thought some of those guys might have made it on that roster. A guy like Cody Clemens maybe, but it's interesting to see how this is all going to play out. I think our bench as of right now looks like Pache, Merrifield, Sosa, Stubbs, and I think that's it. For the most part, I don't think any other person is on the bench from what I remember, but that's how the bench is going to shape out. I know some people wanted a lefty off the bench, but I don't think we really have one. I could be misremembering things. My fault if I am. But it'll be interesting to see, what changes get made in the bench as the season goes on. But as far as this team goes, I want to split it, as in what I expect from the position players, the pitching, and then the overall team as a whole. So starting off with the position players, Trey Turner, hoping for a repeat of post, standing ovation Trey Turner, hoping for a full season of that and not the cold start that he got off to, he's going to be a guy that's always going to be a threat. I hope later in the season, like I've talked to my dad about, I'm like, as cool as it is to see Kyle Schwarber come in and first pitch of the game hit a home run, I very much hope later in the season we see a lineup change that puts him more in that middle of the lineup where he can take advantage of when a guy like Trey Turner gets on base, when a guy like Bryson Stott gets on base, I would much rather have that because a guy like Trey Turner, speedy on the base, is going to get on there. And I would love it if you had a guy like him and Stott as the 1 and 2 to, be your guys who get on base for you. They have such speed that a single could get, like a deep enough single from someone could get both guys in because of their speed. You have 2 guys you have to worry about on the base, with that speed, especially with Turner leading off. If he gets on base, you got to worry about that guy stealing to second, and that's what you want to see from Turner. You want to see him get on base a lot. You want to see him getting those hits, stealing bases, and I want Trey to start leaning more back into what he was before and what he was really good at, and that was, the hits. I obviously want Trey Turner to hit home runs, obviously, but we saw like in the playoffs a lot when he was swinging at stuff, just trying to get anything going. It's like focus on getting those hits, moving runners along the bases, getting yourself on base to be that threat. You don't always have to be swinging for the fences, and it feels like that's what we've been saying for so long with a lot of these guys these past 2 seasons is you don't gotta swing for the fences every single time. Just get a little blooper, get a single, get yourself a double. It doesn't always have to be home runs with this team. We live by the home run and die by the home run, it seems like, but that's what I'm expecting. And then defensively, you hope for an improvement from Trey Turner from last year. Hope to cut those errors down and get back to being that defensive wizard that he was. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs especially, man, that I still think about that play against Atlanta and was it game 1, I believe it was. That was absolutely magnificent, like game-saving stuff right there. Want to see more of that from Trey Turner. Moving on, Bryce Harper, health. That is the biggest thing we want to see out of Harper is health. We don't need a slow start to the season. Or, well, technically he didn't even have that slow of a start, but, I meant that more so as, like, the whole team. I don't want to jump ahead, but, like, that was something I was explaining to my dad where this team had such a slow start, and plus we didn't have Harper at the start of it. Now with Harper fully healthy, hopefully, you just want to hit the ground running, That's all I really want. Hit that ground running. Don't want as much of a slow start as last season where we were just struggling to break 500. Like, I'll never forget how much of a monumental moment it was for us last season when we finally just hit 500, but Bryce Harper, he's going to do what he always does. He's going to mash. He's going to get on base. He's going to be a threat for these pitchers. They're going to try and pitch around him. And that leads to the sort of next point of who's going to be backing up Harper this season. Like I said, that lineup rarely changes. So knowing Rob Thompson, I wouldn't be surprised if he has Alec Bohm right there behind Harper again. And that moves us to the next player, Alec Bohm. If Alec Bohm is going to be batting 4th behind Harper, you want to see those improvements so that they can't bat around him. He's supposed to be protecting Harper so that they feel they can't pitch around him, get him on base so that the guys behind him won't be as big of a threat, Alec Bohm had a decent season last season. You want to see improvement upon it. And, we talk so much about, players having something to prove, I feel like if there was anyone on that sort of hot seat, it feels very much like this is Alec Bohm's hot seat season in a sense. he did really decent last season. I mean, he had a good amount of RBIs last season. I had to double check the number to remember. Let me double check. Sorry, I didn't have this readily available. He had 97 last year to go along with his 20 home runs. So like I said, he did pretty decent. He didn't strike out as much as previous years. He got his walk numbers up from the previous year, but still not to the amount of his first 2 years. His average was down, but he was getting on base a bit more often. He obviously got his slugging up. And, he was okay. He 1.1 WAR, wasn't the best defensively, but wasn't like a liability like previous years, But you want to see those improvements, what's it called? You want to see those improvements so that if he is backing up a guy like Harper, you aren't as worried, and that's why I said later in the season, I would much more likely prefer it if, they sort of experimented with different guys behind Harper. Now, I don't know if Kyle Schwarber is necessarily the best guy to put right behind Harper, because, I mean, with Schwarber, he's the definition of, home runs or bust a lot of times. Like, he had, didn't he have, like, more home runs than singles last season or something like that? Now, having Schwarber behind Harper definitely adds that level of threat of, like, well, we can't pitch around Harper because a guy like Schwarber can go yard at any moment. But it also is a bit of a worry because, doesn't have the best batting average. Now, he got on base a lot of times because he was walking a lot of times. And, of course, he just slugs like crazy. But, like I said, it'll be interesting to see who they put behind Harper. That's going to be the most interesting thing. I only bring this up because I don't want people to think I'm dogging on the guy. I've been saying this pretty much for last season. He's going to get some playing time out there sometimes when guys need rest, obviously, and when they want to switch DHs, but please keep Kyle Schwarber in the outfield to a minimum this season, please. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm hating on the guy. I absolutely love Kyle Schwarber. He's one of those guys on this team that you just can't hate, man. I find it physically impossible to hate Kyle Schwarber, He's just an absolutely fun player, but if there's one thing I just ask, just please do not put him out there in the outfield, unless it's obviously, those games where guys need rest, obviously, but keep it to a minimum is all I ask. Moving on to some of our next players, I think a big one is, or two big ones really, is JT and Nick Castellanos. There is just so much that you have to think about with these two players. With Castellanos, you really want to see him kind of repeat what he did last year, 29 home runs, 106 RBIs. Now, you want to hope he gets those K rates down, but, he did pretty well for us. He did decent enough in the outfield. I mean, he didn't have any errors, but, like, he did decent enough out there. They have really schemed it to fit well for him in that outfield spot. But you hope for, like I said, you hope for a repeat, which is getting those K numbers down. And you just don't want to see him repeat what happened in the postseason NLCS, and really after game 2 of the NLCS. He was magical all those games before, but you just want to see less of what you saw in those final games where he went cold. And that's really the only talking point there. As far as JT has talked about that he's worked on his swing with Kevin Long. He's worked on it. He's made some adjustments, and that's good to hear, but you want to see it translate on the field, and last season, it was all right. 20 home runs, 63 RBIs, 16 stolen bases for him. But again, the K rates went up. He wasn't walking as often. He still did fairly decent, only a 1.5 WAR in comparison to the previous 2 seasons. I mean, 4.6, 6.5. And, that's what you want to see a kind of return to, especially like defensively. Hoping he can return to that level, but also at the same time, he's getting older, man. He's going to be 33 this season, and maybe it's time, to start looking at his future replacement. You know, maybe look either like I don't really know. I don't feel too confident with some of the, you know, catcher prospects that the Phillies have. So maybe look for maybe trading for a prospect, maybe look for trading for someone, signing someone. But it's like, how much more signing can the Phillies do? You know, I don't really want to see them turn into like a lot of the teams like the Yankees and Dodgers who just sign and sign to replace. You know, I'd rather see some guys come up through the prospects, and that's why I say maybe start looking for either prospects you can trade for, or, you know, just draft your own prospects. Like in this upcoming draft, maybe look at a catching prospect that can take over, you know. But with JT, yeah, it's like you want to see the improvements. I mean, he was a really guy that had those hot and cold stretches. You know, there would be those stretches where he was doing really well, and then there would be those stretches where it's like he was going 0 for 4 at the plate sometimes, you know. So like I said, the thing with a lot of these guys on our team is you just want to see those K rates go down a lot. You know, like last season he had a 25.6. Not really what you want to see a lot. You know, hoping to just see some improvement there. And then, you know, we kind of talked about Alec Bohm needing to improve. But then the other ones, the other people on this team, obviously, Johan Rojas, Brandon Marsh, and Bryson Stott. Just kind of want to see a repeat of what they did last year. You know, like Stott was, like I said, he was really good. At least in my opinion, he was really good. He had 15 home runs, so he got those home run numbers up. 62 RBIs, 31 stolen bases, up from the 12 he had last season. He got his K rate lower. Wasn't walking as often though, but you know, he was really good at getting himself on base. I know a lot of people might disagree, but I thought him and Marsh were some of the real good hitters, especially, you know, in a lot of those clutch situations. Like a lot of the walk-offs I remember coming because of like a guy like Bryson Stott, you know. And like that's just the thing I like about Stott and Marsh on this team, is they do really well in that department of just getting themselves on base, getting hits, you know. I talked about it in that, you know, season finale episode, you know, where after we lost in the Diamondbacks, I mentioned that especially in those final couple games, it seemed like Brandon Marsh was the only guy that was playing with heart out there. You know, he was the only guy that was really, you know, he was the only guy that wasn't really swinging at stuff outside the box. He was taking pitches. He was getting himself on base. You know, he got a double and was like super hyped about it, but it was just like, you know, he looked like the only guy that still had that fight, that didn't believe that this series was over, you know, where it seemed like a lot of guys, it felt like they just lost that energy, you know. And that's why I love about Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh, is they bring that energy, you know. Now with Marsh, you want to see a bit better numbers from him at times, you know. I mean, he had 12 homers, 60 RBIs, pretty good. He had 10 stolen bases, but again, you want to see those K rates go down. 30.5% K rate, not what you want to see, but he did get the walks up. He went from a 6.1 walk percentage in 2022 to 12.5 in 2023, so that's really good. You know, he got his on base up, he got his slugging up, but you want to see it get a bit more better. He had a 3.4 WAR. He was pretty good defensively for us, especially out in left field. You just hope to see a lot more improvement. You hope for health, especially. I know last season, you know, he got injured when he hit the wall. Just hoping to see a lot better there. And of course, the biggest talking point with Marsh is always going to be, you know, that you want to see him improve against lefties, especially, is the one thing that you want to see him improve against a lot. And hopefully Rob Thompson gives him the time against lefties to really improve, you know, because that's going to be the biggest issue for him always, is going against lefties. And really just, you know, just keep improving is all I ask for from a guy like Marsh and Stott, you know, is keep showing those improvements. I'm not too concerned with them. They do really well. And also it's like, you know, obviously you expect a lot from every player on this team, but it's like, I'm not expecting much out of those two as I am from like the top end players like a Trey Turner, like a Bryce Harper, like a Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos. You know, it's like, I want you to be there to fill in the holes that maybe the other guys may have, you know. Like, I want you to be there to be the hitters that, you know, get the hits, that get yourself on base, so that the guys who are going to go yard and mash, you know, are there. And that's why I said I'll be interested to see how Rob Thompson manipulates his different lineups. You know, how is he going to capitalize? I think we'll see him definitely look to improve a lot this season on that, you know, is manipulating his lineups and really being versatile and really looking at the fact that, like, hey, these guys are getting on base a lot. It would be a lot better if we had them ahead of these guys who get a majority of the runs driven in, you know. It'll be interesting to see how these lineups play out. That's the biggest question mark for me. Pitching, though. Pitching is going to be the most interesting spot on this team. Man, I mean, you have Nola, you have Wheeler, hoping for, again, more health, not much of a slower start like last season. Ranger as well, hoping for a lot of health out of him. That's the sort of three main guys there. Nola, hopefully with this long-term contract, has a lot of his nerves eased, you know, and gets the home run numbers down, you know, the home runs allowed, get those numbers down, you know, and just keep up what he does always. Get those strikeouts, get those innings, and do really well for us. Now, Fangraphs, I don't know what's up with Fangraphs. They have Nola projected to pitch 180 innings, Wheeler 172. I think these are projections. I don't think those were last season's. Obviously, they weren't because Nola pitched 200 innings last season and Wheeler pitched 192. So unless they're foreseeing some type of injuries, I don't know where they're getting these projections for their innings pitched, because those are two guys that will eat a lot of innings for you, you know. But yeah, that's sort of the main thing with those two. Just continue doing what you're doing. Again, hopefully less of a slow start, you know, because if I remember correctly, I don't remember Wheeler being fully healthy at the start of last season. I remember Ranger was missing some time at the start of last season. So again, that's just the biggest thing with this team as a whole is health wise, you want to have a strong start, and obviously you don't want any issues later on in the season with health. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Ranger really has to lock in, really has to get a lot more innings in my personal opinion, you know. Want to see him go deeper than we see him a lot of times, you know, and really solidify himself in that third spot. And then the rotation from there, it's just man, I'm not too keen on it. You have Christopher Sanchez who can fill in, eat innings for you, do decent as that like bottom half rotation starter, but the biggest one is Taijuan Walker, man. I am pretty sure he is going to start the season on the 15-day IL, which is not what you want to see. He's had issues all spring training. And again, the guy has 3 more years on his contract. Who knows? He could completely change things around. But as of right now, this is looking like one of the worst contracts the Phillies have handed out in recent years. Just hasn't been doing well. Is not going to start the season healthy already. And that's going to look to turn Spencer Turnbull into that position, which when we first signed him, I think I talked about it where I said he very much is probably going to be in that like long reliever type role like Sanchez was a lot of times last season. It looks to be the same thing where it's like he's going to have to come fill in for a couple spots, go long, you know. But yeah, not what you want to see to start off the season from Taijuan Walker. And you can just hope that he does better throughout the season, but not looking like the best contract. The bullpen, just hoping to see a lot of guys sort of repeat what they did last season, but also improve upon some things. Like, for example, Jose Alvarado, got to get those walks down. I mean, how many times did he walk a lot of guys, get guys on base, but still find a way to get himself out of those situations, you know? Some other pitchers, Jeff Hoffman, want to see a repeat of last year. He was doing really well, especially in the postseason. You know, it was like, other than that Austin Riley, you know, hit, he was doing really well. You know, he did really well for us last season. In the 54 games that he played for us, he had a 2.41 ERA. What else? Let's see. I mean, again, like a lot of these guys, they kind of didn't get the walks down a bit, but you know, he wasn't letting up a lot of homers. He was getting a lot of Ks. You know, he was doing real good. And the biggest question mark with this sort of bullpen is obviously that, you know, you feel they didn't add enough pieces. You know, like you still have to worry about, hey, is Sir Anthony Dominguez gonna put it all back together? He had a rough sort of year last year. It wasn't the best, wasn't the worst, but it wasn't like his 2022, So you want to see a callback to like that. You want to see a callback to like even his 2018 season. He played 53 games for us, had 16 saves, 2.95 ERA. It's like you want to see something like that. You want to see something like, again, like his 2022 season, 54 games, 9 saves, 3 ERA flat, was striking out a lot of guys. Kind of walked some guys, but not too often, It's like you want to see a repeat of that rather than last season where it seemed like he had a lot of trouble with his control, especially, So you want to see improvement there. That's why I said it's kind of tough that they didn't do too many improvements. They obviously got some guys down in the minors who could come up and maybe do some work, but how much do you trust a lot of them? Like the different options you have, such as Connor Brogdon, Junior Marte. We still have Gregory Soto, who again can throw some flame. Like there was times where he was hitting 98, 99, 100, but he kind of struggles a bit with the control. And then the biggest thing is all these guys coming together. Who's the closer for this team? Another name that we heard all offseason about what were they going to do, or Ryan Kirkgreen, who struggled a bit in that postseason, which, I don't blame him too much because he was a rookie, kind of like Johan Rojas, and they very much kind of had a similar playoffs like Bryson Stott, his first in 2022, you remember, who kind of struggled in that postseason. They were kind of similar in the sense of like, hey, they're a rookie, got to cut him some slack. But then again, you saw rookies like was it Evan Carter for the Rangers, who was just going off in the postseason, But so like he had his struggles, and it was obviously a mismanagement of his abilities at times. And also it was a thing of like whoever's the pitching coach, they really need to tell him to use that fastball more, because when he was coming up, for that final week of the season, like he was like a flamethrower out there, man. He was doing really good with that fastball to set up his slider, his slurve, I forget what they call it, but like it was real good to set that up, And in the postseason, we saw all he was throwing was that slider, and it wasn't working. Like he needs to go to that fastball first and then the slider, But again, who's closing for this team? They're looking to him to be the starter, but again, I think I heard recent news that he had been sidelined with like the flu. He might not start the season, and that may turn into a bullpen committee, in the sense of like the closer's going to be different on any given night. Like Jose Alvarado might close, Jeff Hoffman might close, Sir Anthony might close, Gregory Soto, Matt Strom, That's one of the things I like about the Phillies bullpen, is that they like to play it differently each night, like sometimes they'll throw out Jose Alvarado in the 6th inning, depending on who was pitching before him. The 7th inning, if it's like a close situation, they like throwing Hoffman out in the 7th inning a lot of times. Sometimes the 8th as the setup man, They'll bring in Matt Strom at different points. They'll bring in Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony. It's like they kind of have different ways to manipulate it. And that's why I think they really want Orion Kirkring to be that closer for them, despite being so young, because they like that versatility that they have. They don't want to kind of have it be like a Josh Hader situation where Josh Hader only comes out in the 9th. It's like they like the fact that Jose Alvarado can come in for them in different innings and do work, that Hoffman can come in and do work. Dominguez, like they like the fact that none of these guys are committed to a specific inning, like it's all about the situation at hand. So it's going to be interesting to see how this bullpen plays out. I will say this, I fully expect some changes come trade deadline or all-star break. In that sort of area, it's like I expect to see some changes there where they're maybe adding some pieces, trading away some pieces to get different pieces to utilize, because this is the part that kind of scares me the most about this team. Offensively, I don't think they're going to make any real trades. I don't know for sure. They might surprise me, but offensively, like with the position players, I don't really see much changing there. But when it comes to pitching, both in the rotation and the bullpen, I expect some changes there. You know, they didn't go after Montgomery, which I don't necessarily blame him, because $25 million on 1 year, I don't necessarily blame him for that. I don't like the fact that every other team in the MLB let the Diamondbacks basically get him, but it's like, this is the part I'm most concerned about, is the second half of the rotation and a lot of the bullpen, because it's up in the arms. You know, it's like, we know these guys can be good, but how often do we see them struggle, you know? And that takes us to our expectations as a whole for the Phillies franchise this next upcoming season. The expectation is obviously the same as these past, or well, really last year, because 2022, who was really expecting it, you know? It's the same as every other team, basically. World Series or bust, you know? It's like, you got to get to that World Series. Not only get to, you got to win it, you know? These past 2 seasons, World Series appearance, NLCS, you know, it's like, you got to get back there. You got to. Like, after these past 2 seasons with the struggles you've had, it's like, that has to be the main goal. And the difficult thing is, everyone's improving. You know, we did what we were supposed to this offseason. It's up to the players, you know, to live up to the potential that they have. It's up to our star players to not go 0 for something in the NLCS, you know, and be swinging at pitches outside the box, to not do what they do and not get cold, you know? Like, I have the meme saved on my phone. In that, like, NLCS, I think after game 2, they went a combined 1 for 28. They were like Mookie and Freddie Freeman in the NLDS, you know. Schwarber, or actually no, I don't think that was the like final games of the NLCS. I think it was either game 6 or game 7. I think it was game 6 and 7. It was like I don't remember what exact games it was, but to basically rate it off to you, Schwarber was 1 for 5, Turner was 0 for 8, Harper was 0 for 7, and Castellanos was 0 for 8. That's not what you want to see a repeat of, you know. The Phillies have done masterful work these past 2 seasons of really exceeding the expectations of the fans, you know. I mean, World Series appearance, NLCS. Now, last season, the NLCS wasn't the end goal by that point, you know. By the time we beat the Braves, we were like, this has to be a World Series team. And yet, there we go, losing to the Diamondbacks, who were on a run similar to us last year, you know, or the year before that. It's like, you want to see them finally capitalize on it, you know. This is a year that I think, more than previous years, they can be in contention if they don't start off slow, if they don't have too many injuries, that they could, like, be up there with the Braves. But don't take that as me saying I think they're going to take the 1 seed. This is, you know, I am, you know, I love obviously rivalries and all that. I mean, you see how much I play up the Eagles-Cowboys rivalries, and, you know, if I wasn't so focused on positivity, you would have seen how toxic I would have gotten with the Braves one last year. But I like to be positive, I like to be respectable, you know, and I don't like to be delusional a lot of times. So I can fully accept that, just like the previous years, this is the Braves division so far, you know. The Braves lineup is crazy, you know. They are crazy deep. They can make all these sorts of changes that they want, you know, play different players at a times. Like, they have Darno and Murphy to swap in and out at the catcher position, you know. So it's like, they have a crazy lineup. This will likely always, not likely always, sorry. This will likely be their division, you know, for this season. Depending on changes made in the next coming season, you know, the Phillies could put up a fight. Other teams could put up a fight. But as of like right now, and like the previous years, it's the Braves division to lose, really. And it's up to the Phillies to put up that fight. I think they will at times. I don't see, like, maybe at some points they could overtake, but I think by the end of it all, the Braves take the division, the Phillies get that 2nd seed, you know. And, you know, a lot of people will see it as a bad thing, but it's like, look at how much it's benefited the Phillies these past 2 seasons to be that wild card team, to just continue playing, continue building up that momentum, you know. It works out to their benefit, but it has to be it has to be done right in a sense, you know. Like, you can't just settle for that each year, you know. So that's why I think they'll put up a fight this season, but ultimately they'll get the second spot in this division. I don't want things to like age too terribly, but I'm not too worried about the other teams aside from the Braves in this division. Like, the Mets could surprise some people this season. I don't think they'll necessarily be terrible or completely bad. The Marlins, I'm not too concerned with. They kind of had the same team, but they've lost some pieces. And I don't know, like, it seems like a lot of people are down on them. I'm kind of down on them too. But again, who knows what could happen. But I see the Phillies finishing second. I see them getting 90-something wins, like maybe 9. What did they finish with last season? That's what I need to remember, is what did this team finish with last season? Man, I'm sorry for not having a lot of this stuff more readily available, but they finished with, like, was it 93? I believe it was. I could see a similar sort of, but then again, it's like they had a slow start, you know. They had 90 wins. They had a slow start. Harper wasn't there from the start. I think with Harper, they maybe win a couple more games, maybe 95. I don't know if that's too high in the eyes of some of the fans. I could see 95, you know, being that second spot. Hopefully getting either the first or second wild card spot. And from there, it's like the biggest struggle, again, like I said, is going to be capitalizing on these things, to not go cold in certain playoff spots, you know. And that's the thing I was talking with my dad. I'm like, I don't want to make it seem like I don't have faith, but like, I just don't feel super confident in this season. And I hope that over the course of this season, they change my mind. But it's just like the looming thought in the back of my head is just, there's no way they repeat it for a third year in a row, right? Because we've been talking about these issues for many seasons now. The fact that they go cold, the fact that they're living by the home run and not, you know, getting hits, not doing so well about the fact that, like, they're too focused on the home runs and getting everything to go yard, that's why they end up swinging at pitches outside the box. That's why they start getting on these cold streaks, because they get in their own heads, you know. It's like, I don't know what it is, but like, I'm thinking about that stuff and I'm just like, there's no way it happens for a third year in a row, right? There's no way they go on a run in the playoffs again and then get cold, you know. Like, it can't happen again, but it's just that worry that, is that what's gonna keep happening with this team, you know? So I don't know. I very much feel about this season like I did with the Eagles last season, where you saw I was like, I think they're going to be good, but I'm not sure how it's going to play out in the end, you know? This is a team that has World Series aspirations, but like I said, I think come trade deadline and like the All-Star break before that, it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if you see some changes to really hopefully solidify this team. I expect maybe a guy like Mick Abel or Griff McGarry, depending on how they play in AAA, to get called up to sort of like, I think they might play a similar role to how Spencer Turnbull and Matt Strom do a lot of times, where they can be a spot starter at times or be a long reliever for you. Hey, maybe one of those two guys comes in for Taiwan or Christopher Sanchez if they're not doing too hot at the bottom of that rotation, you know. Maybe a trade happens. Maybe they trade for a solidified closer. Maybe they trade for, I don't know, like maybe some better bats to help them out that they can platoon in and out. I don't know, but I expect a better season, you know, hopefully no cold start at the start. I'm excited for this season, man. I'm super excited for baseball to be back. And again, like I said, we got World Series aspirations, but there's a lot of tough teams, man. You got the Diamondbacks, the NL West as a whole, really. You got the Diamondbacks, you got the Giants, you got the Dodgers to really worry about. You got the Braves to worry about. You got, I mean, I don't really know, maybe the Cubs. It's really a lot of the teams out west. It's the Braves here in our own division. And if you make it to the World Series, it's a lot of teams out there in the AL, like the Astros, the Rangers, the Orioles, trying to get a couple more names off. But depending on how the Yankees are post, you know, when Garrett Cole comes back, the Rays may be a threat as always. Just a lot of teams to worry about, you know. Like, that's why I said A lot of teams got better. Be interesting to see how the season plays out, because you never know what's going to happen with injuries. You never know what's going to happen with how players either develop or struggle. Just hoping to see a lot. And either way, I'm super excited. I'm going to be here watching as many games as I can, hoping to watch more games than I did the previous year, as always, trying to improve on that. And just super excited, man. Just super excited for baseball to be back. And I'm just super excited to see that first game of the Phillies back. Wheeler on the mound, going against the Braves to start off. And I will be here to cover it all once it happens. Probably be here next Tuesday to cover the games that have happened from Thursday to that point. And we'll see where we go from there with these Philly talks. Will it be a weekly thing again? Will it be bi-weekly like I was doing before? We'll see. The NFL draft's also likely coming up. And I'm going to mention it in another video that's coming out hopefully this week. Hoping I can get it out this week. But I know I've been kind of delaying some things. I'll explain it more in that video, but I've been dealing with some issues, but hoping to get back on the content grind, hoping to get, for my wrestling fans out there, hoping to get a video out for you guys, continuing the discography reviews, putting out different videos, and just super excited for the future. Super excited for the Phillies. I'll quit rambling here. Go Phils. Happy opening day to all other baseball fans, and here's to the next couple of months of hopefully amazing baseball.